Hi, I'm Maria Trice, your host for A Life of Art. On this presentation, we are showcasing artists who are featured by the Museum of Glass. We'll also take a look at the Museum of the City of New York. And now, our first video on this edition of A Life of Art.
What you see here in the gallery is my latest body of work entitled Natural Progression. Much of what I like to look at, or what inspires me about making glass, I look a lot towards human body proportion and even internal organs and their shapes. My name is Benjamin Cobb and I'm from Seattle, Washington. These pieces here, I think, stand apart. They're pretty distinct from the other pieces in the show. I've gotten a lot of comments on especially from doctors, it seems like, who recognize the title again and see the pieces and say, wow, it really fits. These are a visceral stomach and a sutured stomach. The visceral stomach, these bundles of canes are supposed to represent the striations that you find in muscle fibers and sinew. The sutured stomach has the same idea, and again, there's a seam that kind of runs across the middle of the piece, so maybe a spot where it has been torn or ripped and is, growing back together. This piece here is called lobated suture, and this kind of represents a newer direction in my work too, is the possibility of using multiple elements to create a singular form. And I was always inspired by sort of bundles of muscles. The suture part, again, is focusing on the seam of the piece where you can see the lines coming together. Kind of challenging people's perception of beauty. Something entitled Stomach really evokes, for some people, a really maybe a negative or just sort of a funny feeling or reaction to the word stomach. And so making these sleek forms and challenging the viewer's idea of the word stomach, making something beautiful in that respect, and it's very inspiring to me. I've been working at the Museum of Glass for 8 years now. My unique position in working at the Museum of Glass, and I think that goes for the other guys as well, I think to date we've worked with something in the area of over 250 different visiting artists at the museum, and we're there as visiting art support. So sometimes we're making the objects and sometimes we're assisting when we have like a really high profile glassmaker come in. Being on the stick, so to speak, every day and blowing glass every day really is a learning process. You kind of learn something new thing every day, and sometimes we're challenged quite a bit to come up with a different way to work, or we see different techniques that people use and we can then draw upon that and say, hey, that's a really good idea. And I'm sure that part of that really creeps into how I approach the material. I have the ability to try things different ways and find out what works best for me. And I do think that over the 8 years, that has been a major player in how the growth and development of my personal skills. I get a lot of questions about the windows in my work, and since I am using glass, I try to use all the properties of glass. So it can be opaque, translucent, and transparent. So something it's a sort of a technique that I developed over years of working with glass, where I poke a hole in the bubble in its very early stages, and it's gathered over several times, and as it blows up, that little hole expands into these big windows, giving the viewer the opportunity to see into as well as through the vessel. So it's using really all the qualities that glass can possess, and it also allows me maximum versatility with finding different shadows or surface decoration that I can use from the interior to the exterior. I think every time you work and you're making your own work, you're kind of learning something new. And as far as developing another body of work, there's a lot of new forms in the show, these pod forms, which are based on different seed pods from different trees and flowers and plants. And I can see developing that quite a bit further. As far as changing gears, yeah, I don't think there's ever enough time to really make everything that you're thinking of. So I have lots of other ideas, and I'm sure some of them will come out in the coming years, I hope.
My name is Armelle Boucher-O'Neill. I'm from France. I grew up and was raised in France. And I moved to Seattle about 2 years ago, 2009. The inspiration of our work comes from the micro world, insects, seeds, and all kind of natural science related to it and patterns that link them together. A lot of it is hexagons. I've been working a lot with this shape and trying to recreate it and like understand how bees, for example, came out with these patterns and why it is used in so many like instances in nature. I just find so much beauty into things like that, found, and like imagining like little guys came out and like start to build from there and like work together to build this exactly same diameter, same shape, and put it together. So yeah, I find the hexagon research really amazing and really interesting. Even with this is different processes sculpted, but the idea is the same, and seeds often got the same patterns. My new work, the work that I'm trying to make here at the museum, I'm working on seeds. Most of my inspiration is from nature, and I have this great book called Seeds that I use for my forms and the idea and how to translate into glass. I want to give the glass more texture by carving into it, like more light too, by different lines, working with lines and dots in the center. I've been also working on two like really simple forms that would be disc of my drawings. Today we're gonna work on disc in Calmo disc and pick up some rondelles that are pre-made and pre-painted. I have skills in glass blowing, but these guys that do that every day, they're like a super team. They just make it happen, and that's great. It's a big deal. It's a real big deal. I'm excited to have all this work to work on and just carry on. And like I have a solo show next year, and yeah, this is going to be in the show, and to show people, there you go. I've made it. It's an achievement and the beginning of something, I think. Yeah. You ready? Yay!
Wow. Yeah, I got interested in making objects at a pretty young age. My dad's a potter and my mom's a maker as well. She used to make a lot of quilts and a lot of drawings and paintings. So I was around a lot of handmade objects from the time I was a baby. From like here down, and let's bend the top a little bit the other way. I'm sort of a process first person, so I was initially just really got into the process and just wanted to get as proficient as I could blowing glass and better at making cups and bowls and the functional things. And just really in the last 5 years I've really started pursuing making more sculptural objects with those forms. Kind of, it's still referencing sort of functional forms, but then deconstructing them and putting them back together. We're gonna get it shaped up, let it get cold, and then heat up the surface and start putting the color pattern on there. I've really been focusing on a body of work that is a combination of work in the hot shop and the cold shop, and trying to achieve forms that are impossible or near impossible to make in the hot shop, really working on like flat planes and these really harsh angles and really geometric sort of architectural influence forms that are really hard to achieve just in the hot shop. It just gave me this amount of control and precision working with the material cold, and then also incorporating other like sheet glass and marble and vitrolite that I really enjoyed. Really been trying the last couple of years to make stuff that's almost like impossibly clean. This is sort of a 180 total departure from that. I had done a few tests leading up to this residency, really working on getting color patterns where the color is like bubbling through itself and really reacting with itself, making kind of odd textural surfaces. So it's really kind of working with the texture and the sort of gritty look to the surfaces, and offsetting that with the little solid pieces that'll be really pristine and clean. So we're just really working on contrasting the two. There's, I guess, 5 indentations on here. So each one of these indentations is sort of a seat for one of these solid rods. And the solid rods will be transparent, veiled, solid glass. I think it's probably drawing me back to like the clay roots where it's like a lot of gritty, sort of molten, bubbly looking surfaces, and then contrasting that with the really clean, pristine glass. Stop! I'm trying to let the surface sort of be what it's about. Hang right there, Gabe. Yeah, I'll have you blow a little flip. Blow light. Stop. You know, having a residency is like these 5 dedicated days is really amazing. I've done some other residency opportunities in the past, and it's really like changed the whole trajectory of my work, just because, you know, living and working in Seattle, I spent a lot of time, you know, working with other artists and making work for other artists. So, you know, by the time I've worked 5 days on my own stuff, it might be over the span of 6 or 8 months or something. So having that dedicated time, and also having the crew available. So, you know, I don't have some of the things that I needed for making this work at our studio, and so that was part of the, you know, the driver to try this here. Woo. So it's great to be here and working with the crew. I've known these guys for a long time and worked down here with them, working for other artists. But it's, you know, it's exciting to be here and working with them on my own work.
We will return after these messages. Welcome back. And now let's take a look at the Museum of the City of New York.
New York City. Population 8.5 million, with just as many stories to tell. On Fifth Avenue's iconic Museum Mile, the Museum of the City of New York invites you to explore the stories that shape our city.
The museum's mission is to embrace the past, the present, and the future of our great metropolis, and to explore its heritage of diversity, opportunity, and perpetual transformation.
The most remarkable transformation of the museum over the last several years has really been the quality of the program. It's Paris, New York, Amsterdam, New Amsterdam. That is really where we want to take this historic landmark building.
On view now, Cars, Culture in the City explores how cars shaped New York and our changing relationship with the automobile in the 21st century. America's Mayor, John V. Lindsay, and the Reinvention of New York explores the tumultuous 60s and the candidacy, accomplishments, and challenges of the era's controversial mayor, from civil rights and urban design to union strikes and budget woes. Education has always been a cornerstone of the museum's mission.
So this yoke, it's called, would help carry water.
Every year, over 40,000 school children visit the museum's Frederick A.O. Schwartz Children's Center.
Our past must inform our future. We're a good crossroads that can help New Yorkers decide the future that they want New York to hold.
Today, the museum has reached an exciting new stage in its history and is undergoing dramatic physical transformation.
The museum is embarked on a multi-year, three-phase, virtually $100 million extensive renovation and restoration of this great institution.
Phase 1 was completed with the construction of a climate-controlled, state-of-the-art curatorial center and the opening of the James G. Dinan and Elizabeth R. Miller Gallery.
We are actually, remarkably so, not only on time, but rarity for obviously New York, on budget.
The museum has a vast repository of wonderful images that document the city's history. They include the Byron collection, which documents the city from the 1890s up into the 1940s. The vast Wirtz archive of architectural photographs of the city, and the Jacob Riis collection, the great photojournalist of the 1890s.
A major 2-year digitization project is underway to make these collections accessible on the museum's website.
We're going to begin with 50,000 images. Scholars are going to be able to do research. The public is going to be able to enjoy these images. Students are going to be able to use them for their book reports, and we are so excited.
In spite of difficult economic times, attendance rose 14% in 2009, and the museum is more alive with activity than ever before.
I really can't say thank you enough to every citizen of this city that's really helped make this transformation possible.
Thank you very much.
Here's a saucy lady. Definitely in need of some help. Ruby Bailey was a woman who lived in Harlem. She didn't produce commercially. She didn't sew for distribution. She didn't do collections. She was not a fashion designer per se. She sewed for herself. I think New York at its core is really an exhibition of discovery and rediscovery. And what we have been trying to do is find individuals who have unique stories, unique personalities, and have made unique contributions to the history of the city, to the social structure of the city. And Ruby is perfect because she is an unknown to most people. Ruby was born in Bermuda in 1905 and arrived in the United States in 1912. And she lived in Harlem until she died in 2003 at the age of 97. And she was known and remarked upon in publications in the 1940s. But, you know, we know that she did very fashionable dresses for herself in the 1950s and 60s. Those are the pieces that really have made their way into the collection. And the dolls were made by Ruby, and she fashioned each doll into a unique entity. When I first viewed the dolls, they were covered in dust. Many of them have cracks, and the textiles themselves need the care of a textile conservator. So we have two artists and conservators who are working with us, Chris Piazza and Valerie Boisseau-Tolon. We will be transporting the dolls to the museum, to the costume collection. We have a lab where they will be worked on and kept in one place. When the treatments are completed, we will be showing the pieces in an enclosed environment so that there is no dust, minimum of vibration, and our light levels in the gallery will be approximately 3.5 foot candles, which is optimal. early on when Ruby started dressing dolls, she did work on Barbie dolls, and she was not happy with them because they were very rigid, they were very white, and Ruby's dolls are very black, and skin tones vary from one doll to another, hand gestures vary from one doll to another, but they all have eye makeup, and they all have lipstick, and they all have nail polish. And the hair, each doll has human hair. The dolls have human eyelashes. And they're revelatory because you really are getting an autobiographical profile and commentary on Ruby herself.
In a very real sense, the history of New York City is the history of the oyster. I think this is the winner. This is our #1 oyster right now. This is our MVP. My name is Brett Palferman. I'm one of the curators here at the Museum of the City of New York, working on a new exhibition called New York at its Core, an exhibition focusing on the history of New York City from 1609 to the present to the future of the city. All right, before the hot dog, before the thin crust pizza, the oyster was New York's signature food. Everybody ate them. Rich, poor, black, white, Lenape Indians, everyone had access because they were so abundant. When Henry Hudson first arrived in 1609, New York Harbor was probably the greatest oyster habitat on the entire planet. Oysters love brackish water. They love places where fresh water coming from the land meets salt water coming in from the sea. And that's exactly what we have here in New York Harbor. The Hudson River, the East River, Jamaica Bay, the Inner Bay, the Outer Bay, all of these places provide tremendous oyster habitats. New oysters grow on old oyster shells. These old shells provide the foundation on which something new is created. In a poetic sense, it's kind of like what happens here in New York City. What we build today is the product of, it's rooted in the city that we've inherited from everyone that's come before us. Oysters provided an abundant local resource for both local Lenape Indians and early colonists. Archaeologists today are constantly finding shell middens, or essentially trash heaps, full of oyster shells. Oystering became an industry in New York City. There were lots of jobs available, from fishing and harvesting, to processing the oysters, to serving and preparing the actual finished product in restaurants and in street carts all around the city. One of the communities that really benefited from the oyster industry in New York City was Sandy Ground in southern Staten Island. Sandy Ground is one of the oldest and longest lasting free African American communities in New York, founded right in 1828 after the abolition of slavery in New York State. By the beginning of the 20th century, New York was growing so fast that even this oyster population just couldn't keep up. Because of overfishing and because of pollution, city leaders finally declared New York oysters unsafe to eat in 1927. But just in the last few years, a variety of organizations have begun efforts to bring oysters back to New York Harbor. One of these groups is called the Billion Oyster Project. Their goal, as the name suggests, is to restore 1 billion oysters to New York Harbor. Our hope is that they'll provide environmental services. First, they clean water. They are natural filter feeders. Second, oysters are ecosystem engineers. They build habitats for other species. Third, oysters provide natural defense for the shoreline. Hurricane Sandy in 2012 absolutely devastated New York and especially Staten Island. Oyster reefs create a barrier that absorbs wave energy and protects the coast from erosion. This is especially important as we grow increasingly concerned about more severe storms and rising waters. Our team of student researchers from Wagner College have partnered with the Billion Oyster Project to measure whether, and if so, how fast oysters will grow in Lemon Creek in southeastern Staten Island. I don't know if we'll be successful restoring the oyster population to New York Harbor, but after getting my hands in the muck, in the water, working with these oysters, I'm convinced, I have hope, that oysters can be part of the solution to some of the biggest challenges we face.
We'll be right back with more for you on A Life of Art. Thank you for joining us. For more information on the museums highlighted in this program, please check out the following websites. For the Museum of Glass in Tacoma, Washington, go to museumofglass.org. And for the Museum of the City of New York, go to mcny.org. Also, for suggestions or other comments concerning our series, you can contact us at jazzynet.com. We look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Until then, always keep art in your life. Take care.